The road stretched endlessly before them, a narrow path winding through fields of golden wheat swaying under a sky painted with soft hues of dusk. 4 figures walked together, their shadows stretching long across the dirt path. Each one carried something unseen, something woven into the very essence of who they were. Honest led the way, his pace steady, eyes forward. His words were his armor, clear, direct, and sometimes sharp enough to cut. Smart followed just behind, calculating every step, eyes scanning the landscape for anything unseen. His mind was his strongest weapon, always seeking the advantage. Happiness walked with an easy stride, arms open, a smile on his face. To him, every step was part of the adventure, every moment worth treasuring. And then there was competition, always a step ahead, always pushing the pace. His jaw was set, his eyes sharp. He was not here to enjoy the journey. He was here to win it. They had walked together for years, laughed together, conquered hardships side by side. They were bound not by blood, but by something stronger, something they believed would never break. But life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. The wind shifted. The air felt different. The road, once so certain, suddenly stretched before them in ways they had not foreseen. And then, without warning, the path split. A massive signpost stood at the crossroads, its wooden arms pointing in 4 different directions. The words carved into them were simple, yet they carried the weight of a decision that could not be undone. The path of honesty, steep, jagged, disappearing into the unknown. The path of intelligence, winding, unpredictable, full of sharp turns. The path of joy, lined with flowers, golden with sunlight, promising ease. The path of competition, straight and clear. But in the distance, the sky boiled with gathering storms. A silence fell between them, the kind that did not come from peace, but from hesitation. For the first time in their journey, they did not know which way to go. Honest spoke first, his voice firm. The right path is clear. Truth, no matter how difficult, will always lead to what is just. I will take the path of honesty. Smart chuckled, shaking his head. Truth is good, but intelligence is power. The world doesn't reward those who simply tell the truth. It rewards those who know how to navigate it. I'll take the path of intelligence. Happiness stretched his arms, breathing in the sweet scent of the flower-lined road. Why struggle when joy is right in front of us? Life is short. I choose peace. Competition scoffed, stepping forward, his gaze locked on the distant horizon. You're all fools. Life is not about honesty, intelligence, or happiness. It's about winning, and the fastest path is the only one that matters. And just like that, a bond that had once seemed unbreakable began to crack. One by one, they turned their backs on each other, each believing they had made the right choice, each believing the others would regret their decision, none of them realizing that the choice they had made would cost them everything. The wind howled as the first step was taken. If you were in their place, which path would you choose? Type your answer in the comments. The silence was heavy, pressing down on them like the weight of a decision that could never be undone. The wind carried the scent of rain, though no storm had yet arrived. The golden wheat fields surrounding them stood still, as if the very world itself was holding its breath, waiting. Honest glanced down the steep and jagged road ahead. The path of honesty was unforgiving, littered with rocks, with no sign of what lay beyond. It was not a path designed for comfort. It was a path for those who believed that truth, no matter how painful, would set them free. Smart ran his fingers along his chin, eyes flickering between the options. The path of intelligence twisted and turned, disappearing behind unpredictable curves. There was no telling what lay ahead, only the certainty that wisdom would be required to navigate it. Happiness let his gaze drift over the path of joy. It was bright, welcoming, lined with flowers that swayed ever so slightly. Birds chirped in the distance. It was a place free of worry, a place where sorrow had no place, a place he wanted to be. And competition? He was already a step ahead, arms crossed, staring down the straight, open path before him. The sky in the distance was dark, the clouds swirling, the warning clear. But he didn't care. What mattered was that there was a clear finish line, a way to win, a way to prove himself. For a long time, none of them spoke. And then, Honest broke the silence. "We should stay together," he said. "We have always walked as one. If we split now, we may never find each other again." Smart exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "That's naive. We're standing in front of 4 different roads. The very fact that they exist means we were never meant to walk the same path forever." "He's right," Competition said, his voice edged with impatience. "Some of us are stronger than others. Staying together will only slow us down." Honest turned to Happiness. "And you? What do you say?" Happiness sighed, a small, sad smile tugging at his lips. "I just want peace, and I don't see peace on the road you're looking at." The words were like the first crack in a glass window, small but dangerous. Honest's jaw tightened. "So that's it? After everything, we just go our separate ways?" Smart adjusted his coat, already turning towards his chosen road. "We're not children, Honest. We each have our own destiny. This is where we part." The wind howled louder now, as if echoing the fracture forming between them. Competition turned without hesitation. "I have a race to win," Happiness gave one last apologetic look before stepping onto the path of joy. And just like that, they were no longer 4. They were alone. Honest took his first step onto the rocky path, the crunch of loose gravel beneath his boots echoing through the quiet air. He did not look back. The moment had passed, and the choice had been made. Behind him, Smart turned toward his own winding road, already calculating the most efficient way forward. Happiness exhaled in contentment as he stepped onto his smooth, flower-lined path, the sun warming his face. And Competition? He didn't wait. He strode forward with purpose, eyes locked on the horizon, fists clenched. For years, they had been inseparable. Now, they were 4 figures walking in 4 different directions, each one believing that their path was the right one. None of them realized it yet, but this choice would come at a cost far greater than any of them could foresee. The world was about to teach them what it meant to walk alone. The path of honesty was unforgiving. Sharp stones cut into Honest's hands when he stumbled, but he pushed forward. The sun, once warm and golden, now burned down on him relentlessly. He wiped sweat from his brow, his breaths shallow. Every step forward felt like defying gravity itself. And yet he did not stop. He had chosen this path because he believed in it, because truth, no matter how painful, was worth carrying. But what he hadn't expected was the silence. No words of encouragement, no laughter, no second opinion when doubt crept in, just the weight of his own thoughts. Then came the voices. At first, they were whispers, distant, unintelligible, but as he continued forward, they grew louder. "Why do you choose the hard road? Is the truth really worth this suffering?" He clenched his fists, shaking his head. "Truth is never easy." The voices did not answer. Instead, the path before him narrowed, rising into a sheer cliff face. His breath hitched. There was no way around it. If he wanted to continue, he would have to climb. Would you have the strength to keep going? Type, "keep going," if you believe in pushing forward, or turn back if you think he should reconsider. The path of intelligence was deceptive. At first it seemed easy. The turns were sharp but manageable. The road twisted and coiled like a serpent, but Smart's mind was sharper. He took each step carefully, his mind calculating every possible outcome, every risk. He was in control. Or so he thought, because the path was not just winding, it was shifting. He would take a step, and suddenly, the ground beneath him was not where it had been a moment ago. The road was alive, moving, changing, forcing him to rethink every step. He stopped, heart pounding. For the first time, his intelligence wasn't enough. He needed certainty, stability, but there was none. The realization hit him like ice in his veins. This path wasn't about knowing the answers. It was about never truly knowing anything for sure. A shadow passed over him. He glanced up. In the distance, at the highest peak of the road, stood a figure, watching, waiting. His breath caught. Who else had chosen this path? Have you ever faced a situation where intelligence alone wasn't enough? Type yes if you relate, or no if you believe knowledge is always the key. The path of joy was paradise, soft grass beneath his feet, the scent of fresh flowers in the air, the hum of birds singing their morning songs. Happiness laughed, stretching his arms as he walked. This, he said to himself, was the right choice. The troubles of the world no longer existed here. There was no struggle, no pain, only lightness. Time passed. He did not count the days. He did not need to. But then, something changed. The colors of the flowers began to dull. The music of the birds faded into silence. The air, once warm and inviting, felt empty. He frowned, turning to look back. But there was no road behind him. His smile faltered. For the first time, he felt something he had never felt before on this path. Loneliness. A deep, aching void. He had been so lost in joy that he never realized there was no one to share it with. His voice broke the silence. Hello. No answer. The sky above dimmed, and the scent of flowers turned to something stale. For the first time since choosing this path, happiness felt afraid. Do you think joy can exist without struggle? Type yes if you believe happiness should be effortless, or no if you think true joy requires hardship. The path of competition was ruthless. Each step was faster than the last. There was no time to look back, no time to think, no time for anything except the race. Competition's heart pounded in his chest. The road beneath his feet was smooth, pushing him forward, urging him to run faster, and so he did. But then, he heard footsteps behind him, another runner. He gritted his teeth. Someone else had chosen this path? Impossible. This was his race. He pushed harder, lungs burning, muscles aching. But the footsteps grew louder, closer. And then, they were beside him. A figure, lean and powerful, matching his pace, stride for stride. Competition turned his head, but he couldn't see their face. Just a shadow, a blur, a presence that refused to be left behind. His pulse quickened. His mind screamed. There could only be one winner. He pushed forward, forcing his legs to move faster, harder. But the figure stayed with him. Then, it did something he wasn't expecting. It spoke. You are not racing against me. Competition's breath caught in his throat. The figure did not slow. You are racing against yourself. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. The path stretched ahead, empty once more. Competition stumbled, nearly falling. For the first time, he had no idea if he had won, or if he had lost. What is more important, winning or knowing why you are racing? Type win if victory is everything, or why if you believe understanding the race matters more. 4 paths, 4 choices, 4 lessons none of them saw coming. They had believed splitting up was the right thing to do. that their way was the best way. But now, each of them was beginning to wonder if they had made a mistake. Do you think they made the right choices? Type yes if you agree with their decisions, or no if you believe they should have stayed together. The road stretched before him, jagged and merciless. The wind howled through the rocky cliffs, tugging at his clothes, whispering doubts into his ears. Honest walked alone. There was no one to share the burden, no laughter to lighten the weight of solitude, only the sound of his own footsteps and the echo of his own thoughts. Each step forward was a battle against exhaustion, but he refused to stop. His heart ached, his body weakened, yet he carried the only thing he had left: his integrity. The world did not reward honesty, it mocked it. He had seen it with his own eyes. Deceivers thrived. The corrupt rose to power. Liars sat at the tables of kings while truth-tellers were cast aside. Still, he refused to bend. He would not lie. He would not cheat. He would not compromise. And for that, he had nothing. No warm bed to sleep in, no food to fill his stomach, no hand to hold when the nights grew cold. The town was bustling when he arrived. People moved quickly, their faces hard, their eyes darting with purpose. He approached a merchant's stand, the scent of roasted meat filling the air. His stomach clenched, an unbearable hunger gnawing at his ribs. He had not eaten in days. The merchant noticed his longing stare. Hungry, Honest nodded, weakly. The man smirked, leaning in. I have food for you, if you do something for me. Honest said nothing. The merchant lowered his voice. All you have to do is tell the people my grain is fresh. Say it's the finest in the land. Just a few words and you'll eat tonight. Honest's breath was shallow. His vision blurred slightly from hunger. It was a simple lie. Harmless. He could do it. He could fill his stomach, regain his strength. But the words felt like poison in his throat. His fingers trembled. Then, slowly, he shook his head. The merchant's expression darkened. Suit yourself. And just like that, the chance was gone. He walked away, his hunger greater than before. He spent the night beneath a tattered blanket, his back pressed against the rough wall of a deserted alley. The city continued without him. The world did not care. His stomach twisted in agony, the pain of hunger unbearable. For the first time since he had chosen this path, doubt crept in. Did I make the wrong choice? The words left his lips before he could stop them. The wind answered with silence. Days passed. He grew weaker. His clothes became ragged. His feet, once steady, now stumbled more often. Yet still, he did not lie. He did not cheat. And because of that, the world left him behind. People saw him as a fool. A man unwilling to play the game. They laughed at him. You could have had everything, they said. You chose to suffer. Honest clenched his fists, but he did not answer. He did not need to answer, because deep inside, beneath the pain, beneath the loneliness, beneath the hunger that threatened to consume him, something still burned, a flicker of something unbreakable, a belief that no storm could drown. He had chosen his path, and no matter how much it cost him, he would not turn back. Do you think honesty always pays off in the end? Comment your thoughts. The city stretched endlessly below him, a maze of glittering lights and towering skyscrapers. From where he stood, at the very top of it all, it seemed as if he had conquered the world. Smart had played the game well. Every move had been calculated, every decision precise. He had outmaneuvered his rivals, anticipated the shifting tides of business, and climbed higher than anyone had ever expected. The wealth came fast. So did the power. He dined in places where only the elite were allowed. His name was whispered in high circles, respected, feared. He had everything he once dreamed of. Yet, as he stood before the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse, the glass cool beneath his fingertips, he felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not joy, not even relief. The skyline outside was alive with motion. Cars moved like rivers of light. People rushed through the streets below, laughter and conversation filling the night air. But up here, it was quiet, too quiet. The first time he noticed the emptiness, it was subtle, a hollow feeling in his chest when he signed the final contract that made him one of the wealthiest men in the city. A flicker of disappointment when no one stood beside him to celebrate. He brushed it aside. Success required sacrifice, or so he told himself. But then the silence grew louder. The penthouse, though filled with luxury, felt cold. The imported paintings on the walls, the leather furniture, the gleaming floors, everything looked perfect. But it wasn't home, because home had people in it, and he had none. He tried to ignore it. He buried himself in work, in meetings, in the endless pursuit of more. But no matter how high he climbed, the emptiness followed. Then came the dinner. A table set for one. Fine wine. A meal crafted by the city's best chef. Yet, as he lifted the fork to his lips, he felt the weight of silence pressing down on him. No conversation, no laughter. No one across from him to ask how his day had been. For years, he had outsmarted the world. But now, as he sat alone, he realized he had outsmarted himself. He remembered the past, the days when he and his friends sat around a fire, dreaming together, honest with his unwavering sense of right and wrong. Happiness, who could find light in the darkest places? Competition, always pushing forward, never settling for less. They had once been inseparable, but Smart had chosen his own way, and now there was no one left. One night, he received an invitation, a gala, the kind where the wealthiest gathered, where the most powerful people in the city would shake hands and make deals over champagne. It was the kind of event he once lived for. The night of the gala, he arrived in a custom suit, stepping out of his car as cameras flashed. Inside, everything sparkled. Glasses clinked, laughter echoed. People spoke in polished tones, discussing business, politics, investments. But the moment he stepped into the room, he knew. It was all a performance. Every smile was calculated. Every handshake was a transaction. No one cared about him. They cared about what he could offer. Hours passed. He played the role perfectly, just as he always had. He smiled at the right moments, laughed when expected, sealed another deal. Yet with every passing moment, the emptiness grew. Then, as he stood near the balcony looking down at the city, a voice pulled him from his thoughts. "You look like a man who has everything," the stranger said. Smart turned. The man was older, dressed in an expensive suit, his face worn with experience. "But I wonder," the stranger continued, "do you have anything that matters?" Smart stiffened. The stranger chuckled, shaking his head. "I've been where you are, son. I built an empire. I chased wealth, power, and I got it, but do you know what I learned?" Smart remained silent. The man sighed. At the end of the day, a full bank account doesn't fill an empty heart. The words hit harder than Smart expected. For a moment he couldn't speak, because deep down, he already knew. That night, he returned to his penthouse. The city still shimmered. The world still called him a success. But for the first time, he admitted to himself, he had lost something far greater than money could ever buy. If you had to choose between being wealthy but alone, or struggling with loved ones, which would you pick? Comment wealth or love below. Happiness walked through life with light steps. His heart was unburdened, his laughter effortless. The world was bright, full of color, and everything around him felt warm. He didn't understand why others worried so much. What was life if not meant to be enjoyed? His days were filled with sunshine, music, and the company of people who loved his energy. He laughed when things went wrong, smiled when problems arose, and danced when storms passed. Because nothing could shake him. Or so he thought. Then, one day, the sky changed. The clouds rolled in thick and heavy. The wind howled through the trees. The ground trembled beneath his feet. And before he could understand what was happening, the storm came. Not a gentle rain, not a passing wind, but a raging, merciless force, the kind that takes everything. Happiness ran, his breath sharp, his heart pounding in his chest. He reached his home just in time to see it being torn apart. Wood splintered, walls crumbled. The laughter he had known vanished in an instant. He barely had time to react before the winds lifted him off his feet, throwing him into darkness. When he woke, the world was silent. No music, no voices, no warmth, only the sound of soft rain and the ruins of what once was his life. Happiness pushed himself up, his hands scraping against the broken remains of his home. The place that had been his refuge, the place where he had danced, where he had sung, where he had believed joy would last forever, gone. His legs felt weak as he stumbled forward. His eyes searched the wreckage, desperate to find something, anything that had survived. But there was nothing. His laughter was gone. His world was quiet. And in that silence, he realized something he had never understood before. True joy is not found in comfort. It is not in the ease of life. It is not in the sunshine, nor in the flowers, nor in the beautiful days where everything feels perfect. Joy is something deeper, something stronger, and he had never truly found it, until now. The night was long. Happiness sat among the ruins, staring at the sky, his once bright eyes empty. For the first time, he did not smile. For the first time, he did not laugh. And for the first time, he felt the weight of life pressing down on him. He had always believed that joy was a choice, that if he simply refused to be sad, nothing could ever break him. But life was not so simple. Pain came for everyone. Suffering did not care for smiles. And in that moment he wondered, was he ever truly happy? Or had he just been running from pain all along? Competition never slowed down. He never looked back. The race was all that mattered. Each victory fueled him. Each opponent he crushed beneath his ambition only confirmed what he had always believed. Winning was everything. He had outrun doubt. He had outpaced fear. He had pushed past every obstacle, never allowing himself to stumble. He had no time for weakness, no time for distractions, no time for anyone who couldn't keep up. And so he ran, faster, harder, always forward. Because stopping meant losing, and losing was never an option. He had conquered countless challenges, bested countless rivals. He had seen the look in their eyes when they realized they couldn't keep up. That moment, the moment they knew they had lost, was what he lived for. And for years, no one could touch him, until he met him. The competitor who didn't fall behind, the opponent who didn't tire, the rival who matched him step for step, breath for breath, push for push. For the first time, competition felt something he had never felt before. Pressure. The race was brutal. They ran through dust and heat, their bodies moving like machines, neither one willing to give an inch. But something was different this time. For the first time, competition was not in control. For the first time, he wasn't leading. And then, he slipped. A single misstep. It lasted no more than a fraction of a second, but in that instant, he lost. The ground rushed toward him. He hit the dirt hard, pain jolting through his body, dust rising around him like a storm. By the time he looked up, His opponent was gone. The race was over, and he had failed. He knelt in the dust, his breath ragged, his muscles burning. His entire life had been a race, a relentless sprint toward a finish line that always seemed just out of reach. And now that he had lost, he realized something he had never dared to consider before. There was no one waiting at the finish line. He had spent his whole life running ahead, running alone. And now, with the race over, he turned back for the first time and saw nothing. No one, because he had left them all behind. He had never stopped long enough to build relationships, never cared enough to let anyone get close. He had been so focused on being first that he had made himself the only one in the race. And what was the point of victory if there was no one there to share it? The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the road. Competition sat in silence, staring at his bruised hands, his aching body. And he wondered, had he really won anything at all? Time passed. Days turned into years. The four friends had walked their separate paths, each learning lessons they had never anticipated. Honest had suffered for his truth. Smart had reached the top, only to find it empty. Happiness had lost everything, realizing that joy was not in ease, but in meaning. And competition had run his race, only to discover that victory without companionship was hollow. They had chosen different roads, believing they had no need for one another. But life has a way of bringing things full circle. And one day, their paths crossed again. The setting sun painted the sky in streaks of fire and gold. Honest, weary, but unbroken, walked into a quiet town. His steps were slower now, his body marked by the struggles of his journey. But his spirit remained steadfast. At the town center, a familiar figure sat alone at a grand table. Smart. His expensive clothes could not hide the exhaustion in his eyes, nor could his wealth fill the void that loneliness had carved in his heart. Honest hesitated. It had been years since they last spoke, but something in Smart's expression told him that he too had changed. And then, laughter echoed across the square. Happiness. He no longer walked with careless ease, but with a quiet understanding that had not been there before. The scars of loss were still fresh, yet he carried himself with a peace that only those who had known true suffering could understand. And finally, a shadow loomed in the distance. Competition. He approached slowly, no longer the sharp-eyed warrior obsessed with outrunning everyone else. His shoulders bore the weight of his greatest lesson, the realization that winning meant nothing without someone to share it with. For a long time, they stood there.
4 friends, 4 paths, 4 lessons that none of them saw coming. Honest believed that truth would always lead to peace, but he learned that standing for what is right often comes with suffering, and that true integrity is tested in solitude. Smart thought intelligence was the key to everything, but he found that knowledge without companionship is an empty victory, and that wisdom means nothing if there is no one to share it with. Happiness wanted joy without struggle, but he discovered that true joy isn't found in comfort. It's forged in meaning, in the people we love, and in the resilience to rise again when life breaks us. And competition? He spent his life chasing victory only to realize that in his pursuit to be first, he had left himself with nothing, because no race is worth running if at the end you stand alone. Each of them walked a different road, but in the end, they all faced the same truth. Life is not about choosing one path over the other. It is about balance, being honest but wise, being smart but humble, seeking joy but embracing hardship, striving for success but not at the cost of love. So now the question is yours to answer. Which of these paths have you been walking? And more importantly, are you on the right one? If this story touched your heart, hit the like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and if you haven't already, subscribe. It's completely free, and we have more soul-stirring stories waiting for you on Rare Tales Unfold. See you in the next one.